Darrick Smith. For those that missed his address, oh wow, banging on walls, you're really Toronto right now. Alright. For those that missed earlier, I'm just going to read his bio again just to give you a little bit of context. Dr. Darrick Smith, recently made doctor. To most, he is a revolutionary thinker and educator, but to his students, he is a father, brother, counselor, and a friend. Perhaps one of the most admired and respected young educators in the Bay Area, Smith has found a way to teach what many would consider baccalaureate? Did I get it right? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Baccalaureate material to inner city, oftentimes low-performing students, and watch them develop into better thinkers, students, and community members. Darrick Smith is the founder and former director of the Triumph program, Trying to Uplift My Folks, a youth empowerment program in Oakland, California. He is also the former co-principal of June Jordan School for Equity in San Francisco, California, and has served as an instructor of sociology at De Anza College in Cupertino, California, and Laney College in Oakland, California. He is currently the Center Director for Learning Works, an educational policy organization focusing on equity issues in higher education. So for those that were here a little earlier today, there's also going to be a question and answer portion, but he'll also kind of give a little bit more of a talk for those that missed a little and add it on to those that got some. So please help me in welcoming Dr. Darrick Smith back again.
Okay. So I guess all that I would add, since I'm being really radical today, and kind of at the end of the first session, I threw in some random references to like globalization and stuff, right? And folks were looking at me kind of strange, but I think one of the best ways to frame our current world order, and this is all the stuff I was going to go through in great length, but I'll just keep it short. I define our economic system, our global economic system, is having its roots in two things. Of course, exploitation, but also death and resistance. Those things are really important. And I mean, you can go back if you want to where folks kind of locate the inception of capitalism in Western Europe throughout the 14 and 1500s, and the landlord and peasant dynamic that was there. A ton of resistance that stemmed on many properties of land, and when peasant resistance was quite normal as a reaction to landlord restrictions upon freedom of movement, access to the forests, ability to grow their own garden, in addition to the herbal medicines that was grown by peasant women. Women led many of those resistance. Many of those resistance were organized in the forest, which at the time were known as the commons. As landlords did what is referred to often as enclosed upon the common areas, which is the forest, meaning restricted areas that peasants needed in order to survive, go hunting, gather firewood, etc. I could go through that for a while, but the point is we also want to view education as a similar enclosure. Okay? That it is a space that, given our system, people need. They need it to have better lives. They need it to grow and develop. Not necessarily what's just being given or delivered in the curriculum or the syllabi, depending on the level of instruction and education. It's not just about what's being delivered. It's the fact that you are giving someone the opportunity to combine their life experience with various frames of reference and, various frames of reference and various perspectives. And through that, they can make sense. They can make sense of their world, combining their experiences with the input and the ideas of those before them. Thank you. And that's what education is really about. So if we start to view it definitely in the Western world and throughout the globe, as an enclosure, a space where certain people are privileged to have access to when they are allowed to have access to it. Certain curriculum is provided to them, not necessarily to increase their awareness and their ability to make change, but rather increase their utility to a larger system, giving them more skills in which they can work perhaps a better job, providing more sophisticated services to the system overall. That is not an inherently evil thing, but it is limited. It is limited. So if we look at this trajectory and just understand that capitalism comes from this point of trying to exploit, and then global capitalism, if you will, I'm not going to make this all about capitalism, but the expansion of our global economy came from a need of what Dr. Lunger-Williams calls an economic deprivation in Europe. Okay, that all the wars and all the loss from the plagues had done two things. One, the wars had left many countries in Europe without a ton of money. And two, the plagues have given peasant workers an arm up upon their landlords. When you lose a lot of workers and make the workers who's left have more power. And so peasants continue to grow stronger and stronger in their revolts against the established system. But if it wasn't for the assistance of the Catholic Church, and the church actually assisting landlords with the suppression of the peasantry, you would have even more success from peasant revolts during that time. Point being, if you expand this system out and folks are looking for more lands to take, more people to overtake, you end up with our global economic system and where we're at now. And I mentioned the numbers of 48 million, hopefully I did. In the Atlantic slave trade, you had 48 million Africans taken off the continent of Africa. 48 million Africans taken off the continent of Africa between 1650 and 1850 to support the expansion of this system that provided funding and resources to, in some ways, the New World, but definitely Europe. And this is a big deal, taking 48 million people off a continent in 1650, between 1650 and 1850. It effectively reduced the population of Africans on the planet by over 54%. 54%. I'll say it again. It reduced the population of Africans on the planet by 54%. When you compare the growth of the continent of Africa to Asia and other regions of the world, Africa's growth was stunted because of the Atlantic slave trade. And those teenagers were taken off of the continent in droves to become a free exploited labor force. Now, everybody knows that, but the point here is that when you lose 20 million in transit from the interior of Africa to the coast, that's 20 million lives gone off top in transit. Okay, that leaves us roughly with around 28 million. A third of those died in the first 3 years of their arrival. Okay, so you take us down to roughly about 20 or 19 million, or around there, okay? You take another third who died in the next 3 years. So within 6 years, you're gonna lose 2/3 of the people that you took off the continent to death. That leaves about roughly a little over 10 million people left, most of which are in the Caribbean and South Africa, and the sporadic few here in North America and Europe. So what you have in the Atlantic slave trade is the eradication of an African people. You have a slaughtering in one way or the other for the exploitation of labor of almost 30 million, a little over 30 million people. Okay? And in order to get the land to which they will work on, you have to slaughter the people who are on the lands which you took them to. That's how Jamaica, of course, got black. Jamaica ain't supposed to be black. You gotta kill a lot of natives to turn a beautiful location like Jamaica into a chocolate joint. I mean, you gotta kill a lot of folks. Okay? And so in that, you have a system established on slaughter. That is the foundation of our wealth, definitely the wealth of the United States. But it's the foundation of the wealth of the global economy. Death and exploitation, massive death and suffering. Okay? So if you have that system, that is the fabric, the foundation of your entire global economy. Okay? And I know the New World Order established in World War II was supposed to change that and give folks opportunity to develop and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you had people running that process that had no idea of how to liberate folks from oppression. So you had developmental policies put out there by the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund that further enslaved countries of color to death and exploitation. Okay? So that is your system. So for someone to be educated within that system who is a descendant or an ally to those peoples who've been exploited throughout the duration of this system, their education has to be more complex, on a higher level, on the deeper level, and combine both the intellectual and emotional requirements of someone trying to liberate a community out of that context. Does that make any sense? So I'm not trying to say that teachers don't teach well enough, because teachers aren't trained often to teach well enough. The best teachers in this room are good teachers because they're good people, smart people who have a passion and a dedication, not because they were trained that well. Okay? The best professors, the best teachers all over in post-secondary education, they're good because they care and they have a particular lens. It's not necessarily because our system's designed to teach them to do that. So I think that was the major point that I kind of wanted to get to, and that we understand that I use the term targeted group, not racialized group, not underrepresented group. I use targeted group because just because you normalize and institutionalize the targeting of peoples doesn't make them any less targeted. Okay, it's not like some strange phenomenon that because I'm part of a targeted race that I'm somehow racialized, and the fact that I'm racialized is the problem. No, it's the fact that you targeted my race. That's the problem. Ain't nothing wrong with me being Aboriginal or Indigenous or Black or Middle Eastern or Latin. Ain't nothing wrong with that. I got a history of struggle, I got a history of resistance, I got a history of science, history of mathematics, history of psychology and sociology, history of religion, a history of goodness, a history of culture, a history of all these different things. I'm proud. Ain't nothing wrong with that. I am still connected in many ways, some ways, somehow to that legacy. Dominant groups and people who are invested in what I consider a white consciousness, whether they be Black, white, Asian, or Latino, and many white people are no longer invested in a white consciousness. Many white people have never been invested in a white consciousness. You see abolitionism and other references. But whoever is invested in this consciousness of dominance that it's okay to kill the prophet, those are the folks that are disconnected from the legacy. I have no shame in being a person of color. I have no shame of being part of a racial group or multiple racial groups. I have no shame in being an immigrant. There's no shame in that. There's no pride in that. I'm a human being. But I have a right to the education that perhaps this system has deprived from me, deprived from my parents. I have a right to be guided in a way that gives me access to the information I have a right to. How did I get here? Why am I in this situation? I go 5 blocks down the street and they ain't in that situation. How do you get to keep your job, and we've been in this situation, when your job is to oversee the populace of this government? And you get to keep your job. I get to ask that question. If you are a history teacher or an English teacher and I don't see literature about my people, you're supposed to ask yourself, why is that not in there? As a teacher, it's your responsibility to ask that. Because the root word of education is educe, not induce. Educe, to bring out. Just because your system has twisted it into inculcation, in the inducing of a low self-image, in the belief in lies about history and a revisionist idea of people's ability to have upward progress in our system, all those lies, that doesn't make the root of the word any different. To bring out, that means that to bring out there's inherently something already in there. And the fear is, if I bring that out, what is going to come out of that student's mouth that questions everything we do? So you just shut up and learn how to get a job. Because if I teach you not just how to get a job, create jobs, critique the job, pay people more, change the whole job. If I teach you that, some privileged people believe, well, what would happen to my kids? See? Because the understanding of power is an oppressive one, in which if I give you power, thus I will have none. But that's a colonial imperialist idea of power. And if we hold on to our roots and our ethics and our beliefs as human beings, we won't replicate that. If we do that. But if we keep just teaching people skills and how to participate in society, we keep a cycle. The question is not whether or not people of color are oppressed, it's if we perpetuate cycles of oppression of anyone. And if we continue to do that, we're going to stay in the situation that we're in. The colors just might change on who's shooting who, that's all. Okay, so anyway, blah, blah, blah. Anybody have any questions? I'm a Sagittarius. We're known to be a little loquacious. Big mouth. Sorry. I'm really not like this in private. I play video games all the time. And watch anime, of course. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Carter. I really appreciated that.
Nice. Dr. Smith.
Dr. Smith.
Or Darrick.
Darrick. No, Dr. Smith. No, it's important, right? Because we don't get to see you up on stage or to say, learn us this knowledge at all, or very often. So it's important.
Thank you.
My question to you though, is if capitalism is not ending tomorrow, if the youth that are inside this room are still going to buy Nike tomorrow, if to put food on the table, they're still going to go to Walmart, then what should our high school students that are in this room do? What should the black educators that are inside this room do? What should the social service agencies in this room do? What should we do tomorrow to do what you're to counteract? Because we all feel what you're telling us. We feel it. We live it every day. Thank you.
Right on. That's such a cool question. So I'll answer as directly as I can. I'm not beating around the bush. Systems are only as strong as the people who perpetuate them. Capitalism is an idea. The United States, like most Western countries, have never been pure representations of the capitalist ethic. Never, ever. The idea of capitalism as an economy of progress and of innovation has dominated people's minds for such a long time, and it makes some sense. It creates competition. Competition can create innovation. That's logical. But that type of dynamic does not need to exist in such an exploitive system. So in that, saying that, meaning that when you think in terms of capitalism, you think in terms of, if you do well, great. If you do poorly, you better pull your ass up or you're going to be broke, okay? That's usually not been the case for corporations, right? Corporations can do whatever the hell they want, and if they're big enough, we'll bail them out, which we probably need to since they employ so many people. So in that, we're not pure capitalism. So in that, what I advise students to do is keep it in context, keep it in the context of humanity. You do need to make a living here. It's a coercive economy. It's a coercive economy. It's an economy that operates on force. If you don't work, you will probably starve. Okay? So that's coercion. Okay? So in that, you want folks, as we always have, to be able to navigate that in a way that still shows respect, but also an awareness of what our communities have to face. I am totally with, and I always encourage my students to get a job. I encourage, and I have encouraged my students for years to get a darn good one. To move up the ladder if they see purpose in moving up the ladder. But the question is, what do you do with the position that you're in? That's always the question. And this is why I emphasize that every one of our programs, every one of our efforts has to have an incredibly important segment of character development and a clear idea on what type of human beings we're trying to create. Okay? When you think of larger institutions, they have a model of the human being they're trying to create. It might not be that deep, it might not be that involved, but they have an outcome in mind. Okay, for example, graduate law schools are geared toward producing corporate lawyers. So if you go in saying, I want to be a people's lawyer, I want to be a civic lawyer, I want to defend people, when you go to most law schools, their point is to get you into corporate law. Okay? You can see it in the classes, you can see it in the people that bring to speak, you can see it in their connections, their networking, etc. So that's very clear. What are our goals? What type of human being are we trying to produce in addition to a laborer or a high-level worker or whatever it may be? Who are we sending back to the community when they're done with our program? Okay? That's the question. And so as capitalism is going to exist, capitalism is going to change. It's just a system. It's just a word. Most people who say it don't even know what it is. Okay? Most people who argue against socialism don't know what it is. Okay? Most folks that talk about communism use examples in which leaders that were authoritarian and dictators use communism as an excuse to exact their dictatorship ways. So most folks don't even know what these terms actually mean in actual reality. So we don't have to necessarily be too concerned with what the system is creating, if we're the ones seeing the students all the time, we have the ability to shape them in a way that contradicts the most illest, craziest, destructive elements of any system that's running. Hopefully that makes some sense, because I'll be glad to say it. Yeah.
I have to pick up on your corporate lawyer point.
Yeah.
I was actually getting into a very heated debate with my friend Renako earlier about this exact topic. To be very, very blunt, like I'm an emerging corporate lawyer, and I'm also from this community, which I consider to be like an extension of my family and my upbringing. So maybe if you could talk about the politics of selling out and what it means. Like, what is our role? Because I know quite a few like Black lawyers who have an incredible amount of power at their disposal. And then I'm just noticing a schism between sort of the activist, social justice-oriented community and that segment of our community, which is still our community, right? These are our peers. I would like to think so. But I feel sometimes alienated, so I'm wondering if you can maybe talk a little bit about what is the role, right, of socially conscious or progressive people who walk in those corridors of power.
Woo! I love Toronto! Y'all sick! This is dope. Okay. So everything I say is my opinion, right? I'm no expert on anything but being me, and barely that at times. Selling out. Ah, that's great. Okay, so let me frame it this way, if I may. Okay. When I work with my students, we talk about courage and power of influence. Meaning that there's a lot of cats that you can't do nothing with. Like, I used to roll with cats that was, okay, I'm using a lot of slang here, but, yeah, thank you. So, I used to roll with dudes that was strapped. They loved me, I loved them. I know many of them since kindergarten, 7th grade, we rolled together. I trusted them with my life because I had to. They trusted me. It's all good. My parents knew them. It's old school, you feel me? Good folks. But there's certain things that I don't agree with. You feel me? Period. I don't agree with. Like, if a girl's talking crazy to a guy, I don't think a guy gets to slap her or snatch her up. I don't believe in that. I wasn't raised that way. You feel me? So if my partner steps up, calls it a B word, like, man, what's something about to slap this? I'm snatching that fool. Okay? Not just because it's against my values, but because I know that no one else watching that can snatch it. Anybody else trying to snatch my partner, might get slapped with a pistol. I won't. He better not slap me with a pistol. You feel me? I've known the cat my whole life. You better not slap me. We gonna be fighting up in these streets, right? Okay? But I can. That's my power and influence. Like most of us, our influence is rooted in our relationships. Okay? So when you think in terms of folks getting into positions of power, they have a power relationship within a particular environment. Okay? So then becomes this question of what is their level of courage? As I ask educators all the time in the States, don't come working in my community if you're a coward. We got plenty of cowards. I don't need one teaching history. Okay? Like, we don't need that, right? And a person can develop a certain courage because they have it in them, they just need to bring it out. But some folks just ain't got it. Okay? And that's not most. I'm just saying some people, they can't bring it out. Okay? Same thing when it comes to selling out. Okay? Some folks are trained, brainwashed well to forget where they came from and what power they have. They're brainwashed well, very well. Okay? Other folks are just scared and not willing to put out the risk. Okay? And that's not something you can do a simple training on. Do you have the level of courage you're asking your students to have when they come and take a risk at being vulnerable in a school system that's traumatizing? I don't go to places I've been traumatized unless I'm mandated to do it through compensatory education. Alright? I hate the teachers sometimes, I might have been jumped, what happened. You ask me to go back the next day when they make me feel stupid? that's asking me to have a certain level of courage. And if my teachers ain't got it, they ain't got no business asking it of me. All right? So in the state of selling out, we got folks that they have that materialistic, very Western idea of power and strength that is in reality just an illusion. Your ability to manipulate folks and get a good job is not an indicator of strength. Your ability to make it through college can be an indicator of strength, but your degree alone is not an indicator that you have any strength. Okay? It is an indicator that you have the ability to follow orders appropriately. Okay? And the higher up you go, the more likely you are to be brainwashed. Okay? So in that's how I view this idea of selling out. I love the term. I use it. I like that term. Okay? And folks are like, ain't no sellout. You mad at me just because I made it. I ain't mad at you because you made it. I'm mad at you because how you define making it. Alright? If you define making it is I don't have to think about folks that are suffering. Whether you white, black, yellow, or Asian, white, yellow, or red, you know, in the States, yellow pride is Asian pride, but if you are any of those groups, I'm locating your ideology as one that accepts dehumanization as part of the human condition, even in a highly advanced, highly monetized system like the global system we're in. Okay? If you can spend as much money as the United States and Canada and many developed worlds do on military, and it only takes a fraction of that to feed the world, that's a problem. If you expect me to accept that, well, you expect me to be as dehumanized as you. Alright? So I say that to folks who are sold out too. I ain't asking you to go and start a program if you got a 9-to-5 job. How you gonna do that? Right? I mean, it's hard. I ain't telling somebody to leave their work to go work with the kids. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you have to have a consciousness that understands your ability to make change and influence. And the last thing I'll say on that, because I'm rambling, not rambling, but I talk a lot. But the last thing I'll say on that is that my main critique is folks that have so-called made it in their eyes and act as if they have no responsibility to model an improved being to the community. Like we don't need models. Like, it's crazy. You guys understand what I'm saying? Like, dudes is like, yeah, man, I made it now, and so I'm gonna be all foul to people and foul to women. I'm all about my cars. I'm all about my house because I made it right. That's all about money. And it's like, you's a sucker, blood. You's a sucker. We don't need you. You ain't done nothing fresh now. Well, I made it. That's for you and your family. Well, I'm all about me and mine. Well, if you're all about you and yours, quit talking about how you done made it. You ain't made it. You've become a replica of all those who've oppressed us. It's all about you and yours. Right? Ain't that what plantation owners say? Like, that ain't nothing different, bruh. I mean, you got a nice car, word. I mean, that is beautiful. But I don't know how that changes anything, you know what I'm saying? So does that answer your question though? I mean, that's kind of how I see it. It is this question of courage and people's awareness, you know what I mean? Because we done had money now for a while. I'm talking about black folks. You know, black folks have had small but middle class communities, you know, dating a long time back, and this black middle class has gotten larger and larger. But we still be having homicide rates, we still under attack. You know, the incarceration rate in the United States is crazy. I know here in Ontario, 20% of the prison population in Ontario is African American, is black in Ontario. So you have these targets going on. And so, and we got money, and we throw money in the air in the videos, and we got diamonds. And we still toe up, so obviously that strategy doesn't work. Yeah.
Some more in 10 minutes.
I'll just be quicker.
Alright, hi.
Hi.
So I just wanted to ask a question. The question is operating under an assumption.
The assumption is that we need to have unity across genders, across races, across classes to have complete social revolution or social change on a deep-rooted level, right? So that's the assumption. The question is, how do we incorporate, or how do we deal with people from outside of the community who grew up outside of the context of poverty, who grew up outside of the context of being marginalized, who grew up outside of the context of being criminalized, who want to come and work to help change the world, whatever. But they've grown up under the system, and every fabric of their default mode is a replica of that oppressive system. So they walk with that, even if they want to help the community, right? And so how do we, one, protect the community, at the same time have this operating under that assumption that we need to make connections between the classes, between the races, and breaking down those barriers? How do we do that?
Okay, so I'll give you a quick response to that. I've always found it really strange that whenever I have to encounter whenever I go into a space that is institutionalized and supported by the dominant structure, I always got to go through some damn orientation. And then when the dominant folks want to come in my neighborhood, they act like they don't need no orientation. Like they will stroll in and be like, I got my degree, so I'm about to do work. No, you ain't. Tell me what qualifies you to do this work. Well, I have a degree from, that might eliminate you. What qualifies you to do this work, right? I spoke at one of the graduate, this will be really quick. I was one of the speakers, they had 2 speakers for the Black graduation at University of California, Berkeley, some years ago. And I was one of the speakers. And my parents was there, and my dad was laughing. My dad don't laugh that often. Old school Louisiana, he don't think much is funny. But he was like the only one laughing. Like, and we talk like, probably like 1,000 people. But I said, it's a great thing to graduate, except for now, your degree has made you more of a suspect in our community than an ally. Dead silence, right? Except for my dad. Yeah. In that, I advocate for all groups, organizations. It was in my dissertation, actually in the initial stage of my dissertation, I wrote about the need for schools to have what I call a situated identity development, meaning that I advocated for schools to have their on-site program to retrain educators on what it means to actually be a teacher there. Okay? And I like, anybody ever seen the movie Platoon? It's a Vietnam movie, Charlie Sheen. Like 4 of y'all? Man, alright, it was a good movie. Anyway, quickly, Charlie Sheen go through all this boot camp. I ain't gonna tell you the whole movie. But he go through this whole boot camp thing, go boot camp. And then, he get off the plane in Vietnam, right? Then they send him to his unit in the jungle, right? He get to his unit, meet his sergeant and stuff, they look at him, he got all his equipment, everything, he ready. They just start taking the stuff off. You don't need this, you don't need this, you don't need this will slow you down. You don't need this is gonna dehydrate you. You throw this, okay. All you need to remember is this, okay? Don't do nothing unless we tell you to, okay? If you get lost, don't scream out, we'll come get you, and always keep your feet dry. And he was like, all my stuff is on the floor, you feel me? But the point is, what he learned in boot camp wasn't gonna work out there in the jungle. And the cats who had been there had to school him real quick. Because if he don't know what to do, he gonna get us all killed. That's how I feel about people coming in the community from outside. Okay, that you need to go through just a quick, from the veterans, the OGs has been there and be like, check it out. I know they told you to do this, but don't do that, because we don't do that here, because the last person that did that ran out the classroom crying. Okay? So don't do that. Okay? We need to do this, this, and this. If you need help, call me. I'm next door. That's what what you need, and it's fine. We've always had, we meaning people who struggle, have always had allies from the privileged classes. It's always been the case, because right is right. And no matter how rich you are, there's going to be people in the wealthiest, most privileged communities that know that right is right. So you always going to have that alliance potential there. I mean, that's why Fred Hampton came up with the Rainbow Coalition. Because the idea was that, look, everybody got virtually the same struggle against dehumanization and suffering. So we come together and make it work, it's going to pop off. But don't think you're going to come in here because of your education or your privilege and your desire to do like a little domestic Red Cross, travel around the world, help the poor folks mission. Because I can tell you right now, the people we work with, they ain't out here for no sympathy, man. Ain't nobody looking at you so you can give them a hug. We hug each other. Contrary to what you see on TV, we hug each other. You know what I'm saying? We got love. So anyway, sorry. Does that, you know, I get all excited. I said I'd be shorter, and that really wasn't. Yeah, I can.
Yeah, so my comment or question was about the alternatives for something other than capitalism. And I just wanted to know, have you ever considered mixing or taking all the other systems, like socialism, communism, traditional way of doing things, and taking what works with it and putting it into one place? Have you ever considered that?
Well, I consider,
for example, if you use socialist institutions to guarantee the basic human needs,
sure.
But at the same time you allow capitalists, people that are capitalists within society to still be able to, you know, pursue their goals. Like mixing, taking the things that have worked and mixing it and making it one.
You know what that's called?
What?
Smart logic, right? Yes, but it's not about somebody doing it. It's the direction of people who are not as debilitated, or society is not as debilitated and brainwashed into the suffering as this one. I mean, you look around the world, you find, you look around the world, you'll see models of countries that are very capitalistic and competitive that have social programs. Canada has more social programs than the US. Japan has more social programs than the US. You look at some of our other competitors in Finland and other places that take care of their students, in Belgium in regards to education. I mean, that's logical. Once again, because what I'm saying is the systems are great theories, but when it comes down to helping people, you got to do what makes the most sense for the people that you're serving. And I think that combination is where most sensible governments are moving. I'm from the U.S., and the U.S. is very protective of corporate power, and that stems from the dynamics that occurred in the 40s and the 50s, and the fear that corporations experienced after World War II, and the backlash that they embarked upon by establishing what is called now our media system. Because they established that media system to correct the mistake of having people rely on government and each other and unions. So that's why they created that structure. So yeah, no, that is logical. What you just said made perfect sense. And I think it makes so much sense that is the direction of a larger, of a logical collective government. I mean, that's very sensible. So yeah, I've thought about it because it makes sense. You know, you're right. Standing behind the brothers. Get nervous. Yes, ma'am. Right. Sir? Oh, I'm sorry, she was.
Yeah, so my question actually has a lot to do with sort of a follow-up to Sister was speaking on her path to corporate law. Just this relationship between the individual and the institution. I think from what I understood, what you were saying is that it takes sort of an individual's assessment of their own ability and their fortitude to be able to see whether or not they're able to affect change within that institution. And I think a lot of us, for example, have been maybe disappointed with something, the presidency of Barack Obama. And I'm thinking, like, circa 1980, community organizer Barack Obama is obviously very different. So to what extent, do we recognize that these institutions, these spaces, are a corrupting force, they're a corrupting space, and the avenues that lead to them have this sort of corrupting ability in individuals who may be high-minded, who may be conscious to an extent, or at least they were at a certain level. How do we reconcile that type of dichotomy? How do we recognize that we're speaking a lot of individual consciousness raising and reformation, but how do we get beyond that to sort of reforming institutions on a more sort of collective basis?
Okay, word.
I'm here.
Is that my last one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Second last question? Really?
Oh, wait, they can
Come on, one more, please.
Okay, so I'll say briefly, the reason why I talk about individual consciousness raising is for that exact purpose, right? That if you have it, all right, so if you think in terms of like, okay, there's so many ways. Okay, so for me, I 1000% agree, and I totally believe in your analysis that going through these systems, they have this corruptive nature in them, right? So I agree with that, and that is why I believe in a lot of individual consciousness raising. Collective action is important. Collective action is critical. Most activists, the first thing they get schooled on is collective action, right? Many folks go and study collective action. And when you see grand protests, people are excited about the collective action, okay? So that's the only reason why I'm not mentioning that so much, okay? Because it's valid and it's incredibly important, it's key. The reason why I stress individual consciousness raising is because I usually teach my students there's three ways to interrupt the social movement. Direct attack, infiltration, and appropriation. Okay? Direct attack when they're raiding and smashing you. Appropriation is when they make what you're doing part of what they're doing, kind of like the California free lunch program, the federal government's free lunch program that they took from the Panthers and many others. So now it loses its power and it lost its nutrition. Strange. But anyway, and then infiltration. That what will interrupt us often is having a cat next to us that is crazy and off they game. Okay, so I stress individual consciousness raising because I think that is often neglected by many educators and many activists. Instead, I feel that what people try and do is make sure folks have some type of memory, kind of like Frere's banking concept, a memory of different key dates and key movement names and key members that are symbols and leaders, and they have that memory. But that doesn't necessarily raise consciousness. So that's the only reason why I talk so much about that. But I agree with everything you just said. I hope that answers the response to you. Does it?
Only because, like I said, if I was to sort of assume someone like Obama and the type of mindset that he had, I mean, I don't think necessarily he doubted his ability. I don't even doubt, like, I really feel like maybe he's someone that actually did have the type of consciousness and sort of mindset that many of us share. So my point is like, how effective is that? You know, because at a certain level, once you start taking those steps towards the boardrooms, towards the courthouses, and towards the offices of presidencies, like to what extent is the individual information even effective enough?
Right. So just to avoid me going into a discussion on Obama, because I think that's a dope question and a dope point, I'll just say this. A lot of folks are disappointed in Obama. I'm not disappointed yet, just because I don't know what he's done yet. I get information about what he's done from the same media system I ain't trusted ever. So I don't know why suddenly I start believing him now, unless he has his finger on the media, which I know he don't, because he chocolate, okay? So I don't know how much folks expected of him. I think a lot of people's expectations, give or take some of the things that he might have completely failed on or missed. But in large part, I don't know how many Americans in particular understand our government. I don't think they understand how little or how much power our presidents have had historically. Like, I don't think they understand how many of our presidents have had to compromise their values the whole way. And suddenly, the blackest of black presidents, I'm surprised he can get anything done, okay? So it doesn't mean that I'm a total endorser of everything he's done, But I'm saying, I don't know. I know that the man is in there, he's trying to do the best he can. We differ on a bunch of stuff. We have completely different views on stuff, and he's doing the best he can. I think in situations that we're in, we do have to be mindful that we are doing the best we can within the given context and have a clear view of that. It's a longer discussion, but I think your point is a great one. Great one. Okay, so
One more. Right here. Okay. Hello, Darrick.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked before, but like I said, I'm a firm believer of education. I just find it more difficult to believe in schools. So when I'm working with young people, right, we're talking about education, and they come to a place of consciousness where they can question the education they've always been receiving. That's a very monumental space, but then also, when we're talking about post-secondary school, how do we negotiate, right? Because in this society, schools and education, they'll give you the papers and stuff that's required, but it won't give you the education that you need. So I wonder with the young people you work, how do you navigate that terrain, talking about, dang, schools are some of the most violent and traumatic places to be, but post-secondary school might, give us something that's required to be able to put some food on the table and stuff, so.
Word. I think that's a great last question. Okay, I love that question. I love all the questions though.
You made me ask it too.
Yeah, well, I told you to ask it in this group because I didn't want to just answer it personally or respond to it personally, and I don't really have a bunch of answers or anything. But so this is the deal, man. This is just like the most fundamental thing that we gotta understand, man. That historically, the most successful what we deem as ethnicities or racial or oppressed and targeted groups, including Italian and Irish and Russian and different types. Okay, targeted groups who succeed in education see education as a hindrance to their survival, and they see their success in it as an act of resistance. Okay? Every single one. In the United States, they make a big deal of how good Asian students are at math, and Asian students do so well. Asian students do so well. If you read literature on the development of the Asian American identity in the 20th century, it locates academia as a key space of resistance to a discriminatory system that has historically told Asian Americans that they're not fully American. Okay, that gets lost in our discussion. People just say, oh man, they like white people, they don't have no problems. Bruh, if you know the history, it's the construct. When you think of black success, people have deemed it a black achievement ideology. What Morehouse tries to foster, what Spelman College tries to foster. It's an ideology that says you attack the education system with your head and you defeat it in your graduation. You go to school to go to war with that system. And you either identify enemies or allies in your teachers and peers. That's what this is. This ain't nothing other than that. If it ain't been designed for you ever, if it ain't never been meant for you ever, then somebody has created a system that you were not supposed to succeed in, ever. So when you're telling students, go to school, get a good job, no. You go to school to win, damn it. It is a fight. And you better be ready to fight, and when you come to my program, I'm going to teach you how to fight. That's the point, right? And so you construct it in exactly that way. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, y'all know what's up, but I want to validate what you already feel. You tool them up, you game them up, so they oversee that system. They know what's coming, they know why. If they get confused, they know they were intended to be confused. If it gets hard, they know it's supposed to be hard. If they want to quit, they know that their quitting contributes to the suffering of millions of people around the world because it's designed for you to want to quit. Because if you don't want to quit, they cannot stop you. They have to make you want to quit, otherwise you will defeat it. You're too large a number, and you have righteousness on your side, and you have something that most privileged folks cannot understand, a history of resistance. Tools of fighting. So this is the last thing, this is how I believe we should construct schooling. This is what I do with my students. We come here to do battle. We watch Braveheart, we watch Gladiator, we watch Jet Li flicks, we watch Kill Bill, Alright? Why? Because I want the imagery in their head to be one of blood, pain, suffering, and at the end, total exhaustion in a state of victory. Right? So when we think about it, that's what we do. Post-secondary education is not about you becoming more immersed in the system. It's about you learning the system's tricks on a deeper level. It's about you infiltrating. Instead of always us getting infiltrated, we do the infiltrating. You get in there and you wreak havoc in a subtle way, in a quiet way, maybe in a dramatic way. But you transform that joint wherever you're working with your heart and your vision, because I've trained you to do so. And you're going to school to get those skills to do exactly that. That's how we honor our families. That's how we honor the legacy of resistance. We go everywhere to fight the damn system. And when you start tripping and saying, why ain't nobody helping me? It's my job to be like, I'm here to help you, but most will not. So you better get that through your skin. And if you a thug or if you hardcore, you don't know hardcore until you look back on these years and say, I have won. Right now, you're just a victim doing traumatic activity. That does not make you hard. It makes you hardened, also known as a psychosis. Right? But that don't make you stronger. It might make you more durable, but only durable to certain attacks that you've been accustomed to. Because as soon as math teacher tell you you can't do this, you freak. You wither. The tough dude now says, I can't do that, I ain't gonna do that. I thought you was hard. Only in a certain context. Only a context fit for war on your own people or jail, by the way. Okay? So what we do as educators and youth developments, nonprofit workers, social workers, what we do is we prepare the targeted groups, no matter what color they are. We prepare them for battle. And they go to battle each day. And some days they ain't gonna be that good, other days they're gonna be great, but they keep the battle. And they look for alliances with people with like minds and like behavior. And they form that alliance and they move forward. If you let people convince you that things are going well and stuff is moving forward, you're gonna lose your hunger. It's like a rap artist on his second album. Feel me? You want to keep your hunger from the first album. Stay hungry, right? So that's my response to that. And I really appreciate you guys having me speak again and listen to you. Thank you guys so much.